Oh my
Hi,
goodness.
Mike.
How are you, my brother? We got you live. So guys, here he is. Let me just open up your YouTube page here for everyone to see. Guys, get over Maneco64, get over and subscribe. I'll leave a link in the live comments. We got over 100 plus people watching live right now, Mike in the Night, and we got Maneco64. Let's grab his. I'm going to grab his right now. Throw this into the comment section. You guys go ahead, get over there and subscribe to his channel. The Raven is watching. A lot of people are watching because they are very excited to see him on Mike in the Night. Mario, ¿cómo está?
I'm fine, and you?
I'm doing fantastic. So I was
Good.
talking today to Lord Humongous, and he told me that basically that you lived in Brazil.
Yeah, I was born in Brazil, and I grew up there up until the early 80s, and then I went to university in the States, and then in Switzerland. Started working in Switzerland in the late 80s in a small private bank, and then I moved to London in 1992, and I've been here ever since.
Okay. You know my first language is Portuguese.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that's my first language.
Oh, well, that's my mother tongue as well,
Yeah.
Portuguese.
we're gonna have to maybe sit back and drink some cachaça and talk about stuff, in Portuguese.
Yeah,
Okay.
cachaça, yeah.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure and honor to have you on the show. You have a huge history and a huge background. I was filled in by a couple of your longtime viewers. You know the game. You understand. Now, I prepared actually a few questions for you, good sir, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
I had this one today at work, and I kind of threw this down while I was just doing my thing for the day. And here it goes. The banking cartels for millennia now have been pulling a fast one on the general public. What is the difference with what's the difference now? Why aren't they allowing it to crash? Why aren't they allowing it to reset? And the second part of the question is, what's their end game?
Well, I think they've always allowed it to reset, and the reason we are more aware of it now is that people are more educated. I think back 100 or 200 years ago, only the insiders, in my opinion, and people who were fairly knowledgeable of the system knew it was happening. But nowadays, with the internet and all the information coming out, people know more about it. The end game, in my opinion, is that they want to continue to own everything and control everyone. So what they do is they lure people in with debt, and then they pump the asset prices
Right.
up, and then they pull the plug, and people can't keep uh, financing these purchases with debt, so they have to liquidate their assets with at a price of pennies to the dollars, and then they just know that they're going to reinflate, so they buy it back again, then they start it all over again, and that's why I think there's so much wealth inequality is growing so much.
Right.
Uh,
I covered on trends in the housing market. I covered the we had an article that blew everybody away. That in the comments, everybody that was watching, 8 million people living in the like in the poverty, below poverty in London. 8 million. I couldn't
yeah,
believe that. And then we got more. We have more. What you might call it? Food banks than McDonald's in London.
probably, yeah. And I saw an article recently that one in 52 people are homeless in London. And it's weird because the day after I went shopping with my wife to a supermarket, and we went to get a trolley to go in the shop, and there was a guy on the street. And I thought to my wife, well, he's one of those one in 52. So yeah, and I've done videos recently about how in the US, the top 1% or the top 90%, they own 82% of all the equity and mutual fund assets. So it's getting more and more unequal. And it's one of the reasons why I've looked into this subject, because growing up in Brazil, it was even worse, Brazil. And we had a lot of inflation in Brazil, and a lot of poverty and inequality. So when I moved here in 1992, it wasn't as bad.
Mhm.
I think people were they lived more within their means. And then I noticed about 1997, just before the millennium, people are just borrowing more and spending more. And
Mhm.
it's still going here in the UK.
My concern of the UK is one concern that I had about a year or 2 years ago, and I've been preaching about it. Is the mass exodus of millennials leaving for Middle England because they can't afford to live in the bigger cities? Are the millennials completely bought out? Like here in like my major city that I left was Vancouver. I left Vancouver because I'm not spending $2 million on a teardown. So are you see is London seeing this mass exodus effect? Like Dublin is also seeing this in Ireland, where people are moving to southeast Ireland to greener pastures because employers can't even hire people because they can't afford to pay the rent there. Is London seeing the same pattern?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I haven't looked into it. My daughter, for example, she finished university last year. She's still here with us, but her boyfriend finished 6 months ago, and he's got a job in Wales. It's not, how can I say, all set yet, but she wants to move to Wales because the standard of living there, the cost of living is a lot lower. So yeah, there are people moving to other parts of England where it's cheaper to live. Don't forget, a lot of them have student debt as well.
Right, right.
Yeah,
At the beginning of the show, we were talking about the top 10 worst states to live in the United States, and a lot of
yeah.
them are burdened with student loan debt also, and
Mm.
that's one contribution to that problem. We saw a lot of mass exodus happening in Sydney, where everyone moved to Hobart slash Tasmania, and now the prices in Tasmania are going nuts. Are you seeing the surrounding areas of the London proper? Are you starting to see the surrounding areas starting to go up in price too because of the
No,
exodus of people?
uh, no, I don't think so. Not yet.
Not
Not
yet.
yet. One thing though, I was playing golf like last year or the year before with this younger guy at my golf club, and I think he was 28, and he had a good job. And he said, well, my dad was saying that when he started working, he was on the same salary as I was, but house prices were a fourth of the value now.
Right.
So that just goes to show you.
Okay. Now I prepared another. There's another question here. Um, I want to jump into the whole gold and silver because that's you know that really well. And where do you see gold and silver in Q1 and Q2 of 2020? Lots of economists are forecasting a $1,600 gold and a $30 to $35 silver. I still believe that silver and gold, and this is just my opinion, is severely undervalued because the amount of paper that's out there, gold certificates like Deutsche Bank hands out like fiat currency to people when they buy their gold bars. Here's a certificate, cash this in or we'll mail it to you. People aren't getting mailed their gold. People aren't getting their gold. A lot of complaints with people not receiving their products that they bought for at a certain time for a certain price. And what's going to happen? Like what's happening with gold and silver in 2020? What do you see happening, Mario?
Well, seasonally, this period from mid-December to like February is a good one for silver and gold as well. So I see them continuing to go higher in U.S. dollars in the next month or two. Difficult to predict the price, but I would say looking at the technicals, gold looks like it could go up to 1800
Ooh,
next year. Next year, yeah, not in the first quarter, but
third and
sometime
fourth
next
quarter,
year.
tail end of 2020.
Yeah, or even in the middle, because if you look at the charts, we went from just below 1300 straight, almost straight up to 1550. and now we consolidated since September.
Yes, we did.
We've just broken out, and if you just extrapolate that move, it's around 1800 the next move up, and yeah, it could be quite quick. The move silver should has been outperforming the last few trading days. Uh, yeah, silver. The next hurdle is like around 2150. Could get up to 30 and even more. You never know. Gold, silver is very moves very differently than gold, up
Yeah.
or down.
Yeah, it's a
Eh,
very it's one of those I see it more as a very oppressed commodity on the markets. They kind of want to keep it on the back burner in my opinion. They kind of don't want to talk about it as much when you go on those big sites.
No,
They want to just gold, silver. No. You go to the back. We don't need you up front. We want to start. Look at this company. Look at this. Look at this venture. Put your money into this. And they're not looking at the real intrinsic value. And that's. I personally, Mario, in my opinion, I'm
yeah,
heavily invested in silver miners, like lots of silver miners here in Canada, parts of the U.S., some mines in Nevada, even some in Africa, and gold mines too. Not too many gold mines, but a couple of good gold mines. But I'm heavily invested in the game. I see it. I always buy it on the down. I always buy it on the down. And people are like, "Why are you buying more, Mike?" I'm like, "It's going down. You buy it when it goes down. You should be
yeah.
selling." I'm like, "No, you buy it when it's blood on the streets."
That's right.
Oh, I see
Most
you better
people.
now. I see you better now. I don't know if you
Oh,
closed the
good.
window there. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
did. I did. Yeah.
yeah.
Is that better now?
Yeah,
Okay.
tá mais
Sorry.
melhor. Tá muito mais melhor.
Okay.
É gosto. Okay. We got here now. We got now there's this I don't know if you've been following what's been happening in Australia. They're eliminating the cash ban. Okay. They want to do a $10,000 cash limit, and then they want to bring it down to 2,000, a cash limit like where you could withdraw or deposit or like, and you won't be asked questions. Now they're looking at completely eliminating cash and going into cryptocurrency. Now, like a federalized cryptocurrency. My question, Mario, to you is, do you think they want to put this into place to protect the banks from a runoff because people will lose interest or faith in their banks, especially if you've seen what Westpac's been doing the last couple of quarters and what they've been caught doing. I think it was 16 million. They were caught with 16 million transactions of money law or fraud. 16 million transactions
Yeah.
with Westpac. Now, my question to you is, are they going to eliminate paper money so they could protect the banks from a runoff?
That is
If they go
possible.
negative, because Australia's at 1%.
Yeah, that is possible because if you eliminate cash, people can't take the money out of the bank. They keep it, even if they change banks, it stays in the system. I guess the only way to get out would be to buy physical gold and silver. That might even help gold and silver because prior to eliminating cash, people could at least take the cash out. So,
Like we saw
yeah,
in Greece. We saw Greece, and we saw that happen in Greece quite a bit. And Cyprus got a huge hit on a runoff on no confidence in the banking system.
yeah. Well, Cyprus, that was a bail-in, wasn't it? It
Yep.
was the first time there was a bail-in. A lot of people that had over the amount of cash that was insured over, they lost all of it. I think it was 100,000 euros, if I'm not mistaken. A lot of big companies that keep a lot of cash. People forget that. S-
Mhm.
Not big companies, but relatively small companies. They need a lot of cash to operate. They were completely wiped out. So if you had 1 million euros for operations and you lost 900,000.
That's
Yeah,
huge.
because they insured 100, and then after that, I don't know how much they took. Maybe it was 50% or a haircut or 80.
That's
So it's
huge.
uh, uh I mean, I haven't followed too closely the situation in Australia. I do know the housing market there is quite bubbly,
It's
but
huge. It's
yeah,
huge. I've been covering the housing market on trends in the housing market. I've been covering the entire Commonwealth because all I see is the same patterns right across the Commonwealth. The same patterns, the same unaffordability issues, the Australian, the UK, the Canadian proper bought out of their own markets. People born and raised in their own countries can't afford to buy, and they have the jobs to back them, but they still can't. They still can't get into the.
Well, yeah, it's because the reason why this is happening, and I could see it in 2008, is because we had the housing bubble then. It was going to collapse. Well, it kind of collapsed, and they saved it. They threw everything back at it. The only way to save it was to keep the mortgage-backed securities whole, so the banks wouldn't fail, and to cut interest rates so people wouldn't lose their homes. I know a lot of people did, but all it's done, it's kept asset prices high, and especially housing. While wages haven't followed, cost of living has gone up. They tell us that low inflation is a problem. That's just a sham, in my opinion.
It is a shame.
Yeah, I was looking at the Canadian numbers before I came on. You're supposed to have 2.2 CPI. I'm sure it's a lot higher, just like anywhere else. They tell us here in the UK that it's 2%, but every year, a lot of things that are you need, like food and shelter and heating and utilities, they keep going up by like 5-10%.
Also, food. We had a Mike in the Night show 3 weeks ago, and we were talking about food. And I had call-ins from all over the Commonwealth saying the price of food is going nuts. It's rallying. Food is rallying in price.
Yeah, and you also get, when you go to the shop, you notice the packaging is a lot smaller.
Yeah, they cut back on your
And
chips. They cut back on
yeah,
your apples. They cut back on everything.
yeah, I saw a few weeks ago a can of baked beans, Heinz,
Okay.
and it was half the size, but the price was like 69p, and the price for the big can is 89. So I did the calculation. You're paying 50% more for the baked bean you're buying. I know it's just a can of baked bean, but it's just an example.
But it adds up in the end. You know that.
Yeah, and the other thing, they keep talking about that they're lowering taxes and regulations, but they're not. In the UK, you're still paying 20% VAT.
Yep.
I took my car, well, my wife took our car for a service a few weeks ago, and it needed a lot of work, and we had to pay for it. And you look at the bill, and the government takes 20% VAT.
20 points. I don't even think the mafia takes 20 points.
No,
Loan
and
sharks. I don't think they pull 20 points. Wow.
yeah, I think I trust the mafia more than government. I would.
At least the mafia looks better dressed and they look more presentable.
Yeah, and they actually look after you, I think, if
Yeah.
you don't, stab them in the back.
Yeah. Okay, I got Livil from Iceland. Just sent me a message from Reykjavik saying, Mike, ask your guest about the repo market. Is it just a fancy form of QE?
Well, the repo market is basically where banks, hedge funds, mutual funds, all the big players in the financial markets, it's where they borrow money from each other overnight, usually. And they use assets that they have that they don't want to sell.
Right.
So they're being greedy already in the repo market. It's called the repurchase market. So if I have $10 million in U.S. Treasuries, but I want to buy 10 million worth of gold futures, and I don't want to sell the Treasuries, I'll just tell J.P. Morgan, can you lend me 10 million for a day, and I'll give you my Treasuries as collateral.
Right.
And they say, yeah, I'll lend it to you at 2%. That's fine. And that's what they keep doing. They keep rolling it every day, so they don't have to sell out their Treasuries. But what happened in September in this market is that people wouldn't lend to each other in this market.
Your banks don't trust each other. Banks never trust each other.
Nor the other counterparties like hedge funds or that were involved in this repo market. So the rate went up to 10%, and that was going to because this is the way the system operates through leverage. People keep borrowing short, which means overnight or 1 week, and then buying assets to speculate. And this was going to bring everything down. So what the Fed did is they said, "Don't worry, we're going to provide the money for the repo market, and rates will come back down." And that's different from QE. But then they started QE as well, which is separate, which is the Fed just going into the bond market, which is different than the repo market, and buying short-term treasuries, T-bills. And they're doing now 60 billion every month. So yes, they're providing the I think it's 200 billion for the repo every day or every week or two. They got term repos as well. And they're also providing the 60 billion in QE. So it's kind of a QE, yeah, but it's technically it's not. So, but they also have got the QE, so it's crazy. Their balance sheet has increased by 400 billion since the end of
Whoa.
August. The
Okay,
Fed.
well, the thing is with me, and I asked this to another guest on the show, uneducated economist was on the show from Portland, Oregon, and I asked him, how are they varying the risk on the capital assets being analyzed? Is there like an underwriter sitting there looking at what's being collateralized? You know, if it's not bonds, because I heard if it's not bonds, what are they collateralizing on? What are they going off?
In the repo market, you
Yeah.
mean? Well, yeah, it's usually treasuries, U.S. treasuries, and
Okay.
mortgage-backed securities. Yeah,
Okay.
so if you call a primary dealer, they're the ones who do the repo. And you can
Okay.
find the list of the primary dealers in the New York Fed website. So if you call JP Morgan and say, "I want to borrow overnight, and I've got Tesla bonds," they won't take that. They will take treasuries or mortgage-backed securities.
Okay. The reason why I asked is because when you go down the ladder a bit, you're going to start to see a lot of flaws, right? Because now we're seeing the repo strains in the market, and I understand what you said, how it's creating this flexibility on the balance sheets for the banks, but I just think there's a lot of like crumminess or monkey business going on the lower levels that a lot of the upper echelons that are taking care of this that are like I think there's a lot of money being moved around into other parts that people don't know. I don't know. I just don't. I don't feel right about it. I feel there's something
Ye-
wrong about.
Yeah, and the other thing is there's aside from the repo market, a lot of this money, let's say that they borrow in the repo market, they take it and buy derivatives,
Yeah.
over-the-counter derivatives,
Yeah.
and that's even leverage again. And
Again.
derivatives are kept off balance sheet, so it's very opaque, and a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, and then the derivatives, you can bet on the derivatives, which is like the CDOs, or
Yes.
it's crazy.
It's almost like robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah, it's a casino. It's worse than a casino. In a casino, at least there is some limit to how much people can bet.
That's correct. Now, Mario, let me ask you something. All this, our banking system is becoming more and more deregulated. We removed the Glass Steagall Act. We removed all this different regulations that were put in place to protect the day-to-day average Joe Donuts that doesn't have any like kind of awareness on what's happening with with the banks and the banking systems and the federal and then the reserves and all that stuff. He doesn't care. He just wants to eat his donuts and go work every day. And these regulations were put into place. Now they're deregulating. What's going to happen in 2020 when they start removing whatever's left of basically keeping these casino players, the banks, keeping it in line or keeping it from them losing our shirts?
Well, yeah, Glass-Steagall was repealed in 1999, and it allowed investment banks or commercial banks to get involved in investment banking. So it was the first time, I think, since 1933 in the U.S. They did the same thing here in the U.K. at the same time.
Yep.
They allowed the big commercial banks to get involved in investment banking, and then after the '08 crisis, they supposedly cleaned things up and reformed with I forgot the name of the regulation in the States. You might remember Frank Dodd,
Hmm.
and then the Volcker rule. But those were really not that serious. And I think the Volcker rule has been diluted. I'm not sure how it works in Canada, but nothing has been fixed. So we're still vulnerable to to the banking system. I've got a book here written by the former governor of the Bank of England, Mervyn King. He was in charge during the crisis, and one of his options he writes in the book is to go back to a system where you even have 100% reserve banking.
Right.
That and that the commercial banks would be separate, and they'd have 100% reserve banking, no fractional reserve.
Right.
That's Mervyn King saying. And then for investment and speculation, you'd have different banks, investment banking.
Right.
So yeah, if the former governor of the Bank of England is saying that, it means
Yeah.
they haven't fixed it.
No, it's the deregulation, and now the problem is the people that haven't jumped on to the know of what's kind of happening around them. They always think that they're being protected by their government or their bank's looking after them, and they don't really know what's going on. So let's move on here real quick. I wanted to ask you this because you are in London, and I wanted to ask you, Brexit. I mean, they're dragging their feet with this. It's a ring around the rosy. Why is England still part of the EU? What is happening? Didn't the Nigel Farage create this huge separatist movement? Shouldn't England be on its own right now?
Yeah, the UK. Yeah.
The United Kingdom, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Brexit, I mean, the referendum was in June 2016. So, yeah, it has dragged on. David Cameron, who called for the referendum, he resigned right away because they didn't see it coming.
Right.
So he left the mess for his successor, who was Theresa May. She was a Remainer, and I think they put her there on purpose to delay it and to dilute it. And she did a good job, apparently, in my opinion. Some people say that she did a horrible job, but she did what she was supposed to do: make people sick and tired of it, delay it, and then they got Boris Johnson.
Right.
He said last year, before October 31st, which was the deadline at the time, that he'd rather be found dead in a ditch than not leave on October 31st. And we're still here. Now the deadline is January 31st, 2020. Nigel Farage, yeah, he doesn't have that much power because he's not an MP. And his Brexit party, they didn't, he withdrew a lot of candidates in the general election from the seats.
Right.
That would have hurt the Conservatives. So he doesn't have much say. He's like he started the movement. He's been talking about leaving the EU for many years, but he doesn't really have that much power himself. So people now believe that Boris Johnson is the real deal. I don't trust any politician. I think he's establishment.
Yeah.
And,
everyone at that level is as part of some sort of. They're connected somewhere somehow. And,
yeah. If he had left, they made it very hard though. But because Theresa May even said once, I'd rather leave without a deal than leave with a bad deal. And now I think we're going to see a deal, and I don't know. It's been very, very volatile, the situation.
Okay. We got Marco Santos from Oporto, Portugal, saying, Mike, great guest. My two favorite YouTube channels in one place. And then we have Shanghai Larry. Shanghai Larry is my insider in China. I have one insider that calls onto the show from Hong Kong that actually walks the streets and tells us what's going on with the bank runoffs and the damage that's happening in Hong Kong. And I got another one, Shanghai Larry, who's in mainland China, but he cannot call the show because there's no way to call outside of China. So when he does contact me, he goes to Macau, to Portuguese China, And from Macau, he's allowed to use the internet to message me. So he's basically telling me, say, tell your guest Mario that people buying gold over spot in China now, and gold bullion dealers no gold in stock, closing early, and China government giving people or telling people buy more gold. So
Yeah, I'm not surprised. China has for many years encouraged the people there to accumulate gold.
yeah, because people are buying over spot, according to him. Last message he sent me was 20 to 30% over spot. They're paying for gold.
Yeah, that's quite high.
Yeah.
I remember in '08 when gold dropped from like 1,000 to 700.
Hmm.
That and that was an artificial paper drop, and you couldn't get gold unless you paid 10 or 15 over spot percent.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
China's different. I think it's because they're creating this, this whole madness thing where, oh no, you got to buy gold now. Come on, we're gonna drop the U.S. or you
yeah.
never know, right? Because China itself, the government has been buying gold since 2010, but they've been buying huge numbers of gold, huge record numbers of gold, and they've been pillaging Africa and other countries for resources, and I don't know. I see them backing a crypto yuan, maybe maybe a crypto gold back yuan, maybe. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I don't know either if they will have a crypto backed yuan backed by gold, or they'll just use gold as a reference for their currency.
Yeah, that would be but that would just uh, the American dollar, every other currency would just fall if they back their currency. Let's say even 70% of the gold standard, even 70% towards the gold standard. That would bring the West down to its knees.
Especially the U.S. and
Yep.
Canada as well.
Yep.
Canada, Bank of Canada has zero. We have probably more gold than the Bank of Canada. Everyone here on this live, on this show.
Hmm.
But yeah, Europe. Strangely enough, the ECB they back their balance sheet with 15% gold, and they mark to market. So I think the euro would, strangely enough, do better than the dollar.
It will.
The
It
Eu-
will.
yeah, and the Germans, I've heard that in Germany recently, a lot of people have been buying gold because they're changing the anti-money laundering
Here it
rules
is.
from the 1st of January.
Here it is. I was gonna ask you this next. It's right here. I have it up right here, right beside your head. Germans rush to buy gold as draft bill threatens to restrict purchases from
Yeah.
10,000 euro to 2,000 euro. So I have it up right here. I was going to bring that up next, was my next question. So I'm going to tell you two words, and I want you to tell me what comes to mind when I tell you these two words. You ready?
Yep.
Deutsche Bank. What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Derivatives.
I knew you were going to say derivatives.
Zombie bank, which is
I knew it.
two words. Yeah.
I knew you were going to say derivatives. The D word, the big D word. Yeah, Deutsche Bank. So now look at this. So now, what's like Mario? Let's be realistic here. Let's be realistic. With the amount of tonnage of gold and silver we have above ground, realistically, what's going to happen when people want to call in their gold and silver? What's going to
Well,
happen to J.P. Morgan? J.P. Morgan has, let's say, a 3-inch stack of paper that's out there. That this is how much silver we have, or silver that you have from us, and then they have 1 inch of actual silver in the reserves. What's going to happen when everyone calls in their stuff?
well, the paper game is more pronounced on COMEX, the futures exchange,
Right.
and they leverage it many times over, and they can do that because the Bank of England, the New York Fed, they allow the bullion banks to lease supposed gold that they have. While the Bank of England has almost 5,000 tons, but most of it is owned by foreign central banks like Australia. They keep all their 80 tons with the Bank of England.
Mm-hmm.
And that hasn't been audited either,
Oh,
independently audited. There's a few guys in Australia who have covered that. So Yeah, over the years, there's been stories of banks in Europe where people have high net worth individuals who have accounts with ABN AMRO in Holland or
Hmm.
other banks, and they buy gold and they think they have the gold, but they only actually have a claim on gold. Then they ask for the gold, and the bank says, "No, we can't give you the gold." Um,
Because Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan, with the amount of silver certificates they have out there against what they have for silver, I mean, I'm scared. Like, people calling in, we're heading through some tough times. I want to stack some silver at my house. I'm gonna call in Mike. I have a friend that sent me a photo of his 250 ounce silver purchase that he did in 2014 from JP. Was it gold? JP Morgan of silver certificate he has. It's like, okay, can you call it in? He's like, I did. They're not calling me back.
Yeah, I don't recommend people deal with the banks in terms of precious metals, that they go to precious metals dealer
Bullion.
and buy it directly. Yeah, bullion dealers. Don't never deal with the banks. I have a friend here in London. Um, his family is quite wealthy, and he tells me, "Oh, we got some gold." And I said, "Oh, did you actually buy the gold?" I said, "No, it's with J.P. Morgan." I said, "Well, it's you need to make sure you buy the real thing." He said, "Oh, you're too paranoid," but it's not. It's very clear that yeah, you don't deal with the banks if you want to have accumulate precious metals. But the day that more and more people, especially people with a lot of money that might have deals with banks, the day they demand physical, there's going to be two things. Either the banks are going to default and say we can pay you cash, or there's going to be a run on the physical market. Just like I think into 2011, I think one of the reasons gold went up a lot was because at the time it was Chavez, the president of
Mm-hmm.
Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
He actually withdrew 100 tons or just over metric tons from the Bank of England in 2011 and had it shipped to Caracas. And I think that was one of the reasons gold went up a lot, because a lot of that gold was being leased many
Right.
times over because they leveraged the leases. Like if you have 100 tons, uh, let's say JP Morgan says, I want to borrow 100 tons, lease 100 tons. They only actually take 10 tons, and they they even leverage the leases. So it's crazy.
So leveraging the leases on the lease and borrowing, repurchasing, and borrowing back and re-leveraging and a big
Yeah,
Mickey Mouse. Our friend Lord Humongous is asking, ask Mario about Glint.
Glint. Yeah, Glint basically is a company here in the UK that they you can send them your fiat currency uh, and purchase gold through their app, and that gold is held in an allocated account in a vault in Switzerland. You actually can also demand redemption of the gold. I think the minimum is 10 grams. And aside from that, they give you a MasterCard debit card where you can spend the gold. Of course, there's a transaction, very quick transaction
Right, right.
to from the gold to the local currency, and it's a really good concept. Unfortunately, in September, they went into administration here in the UK and in the EU. They kept operating in the US. And why did they go into administration? Well, there was a company in Singapore, I think, that wanted to take over them earlier in the year. They weren't successful. So what they did was buy one of their loans and then triggered a loan, a covenant in that loan that took them into administration, trying to buy them out like that. Uh, they're out of the administration now and they're up and running again.
Mm-hmm.
So I have been in contact with them already because I used to have a promo code for people to open accounts with Glint, but I'm not I still want to speak to them again, to make sure that that won't happen again, because people didn't lose any money or gold. They did what they said on the tin. The monies were protected, the gold was protected, but unfortunately, people couldn't access their gold and money for 2 months when they were in administration. It's a good idea, but it's still in its infant phase. Glint. I have a Glint card, but luckily I didn't have much in it when it went into administration. But I would still have it now. But people don't like not having access to their money for and not being certain of things.
Right.
But
We got a question here from Reynaldo from New Mexico, who's watching right now. He's asking, he's actually truck driving right now. Yeah, he's probably pulled over somewhere. I hope he's pulled over. He's asking, ask your guest about silver and gold confiscations. It was a thing here in the States. Could it be a global thing? Will it be a global thing if gold becomes a thing again? Would governments start to go door to door to start collecting people's gold and silver?
yeah, I guess there's a couple of answers to that question. The first one is that, yeah, governments can do anything, unfortunately. They could confiscate. The second one is that in 1933, when the U.S. government confiscated gold through the Federal Reserve, gold back then was the currency. It was money. So a lot more people had gold, and they needed to bring in the gold to get government spending going, because that was the money. Nowadays, it isn't. So I would probably wouldn't be as worried as much as in 1933, but as I said, you never know with governments. The other thing I would say, very few people nowadays own gold or silver or even know what gold and silver are. I don't know if you've seen Mark Dice on YouTube a
Yes,
few years
standing
ago.
outside the 7-Eleven
Yeah,
with a
and
10-ounce.
people they won't take the gold coin. They don't want to know. So,
Yeah.
yeah, well, that's one of the reasons why I don't think there will be confiscation. They already, the policy of denigrating gold in the mainstream economic world, mainstream media, is already a kind of confiscation. And why do I say that? Well, because it puts people off from buying that gold, from having that gold. That's why they they denigrate people like us. They call us gold bugs, even though I don't have a problem with being calling a gold bug. Yeah, they say, oh, they're crazy, these people. And then to it's a psychological operation to
Right.
get people, discourage people from buying gold, which is weird because they tell us that Chinese are bad, they're communists, but they encourage their people at least to protect themselves financially by buying gold, while our governments, which are supposed to be free and democratic, tell us don't say anything about gold.
Yeah, which is kind of scary because we all know that gold is the real intrinsic value. It's it's the real deal when it comes to trading. And I would I'm an entrepreneur, I own my own little store, and I would gladly accept gold from people. If someone came in, I'd give them spot value on gold for exchange for goods in my store. Not a problem. You know what I'm saying? I would accept it more than actual. The other day, a guy came in and I got these Eisenhower coins, and he bought something for me. These Eisenhower $1 coins. I think they're 40% or 60% or whatever they are in silver. He paid me with like 10 of those, and I gave him what he wanted. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
the solution to that would be to abolish legal tender laws that make the paper money the only thing you can accept, and let everyone compete and take the tax off gold and silver. I would rather get paid in gold and silver as well than Bank of England notes.
we did a Mike in the Night a few weeks ago discussing an off-grid town. We're just talking about fantasizing about an off-grid town. You got your greenhouses, you got your setup, you got this huge, nice organization, everybody working together, and we brought up minting our own silver. And there's two little towns in the United States, I think one in Louisiana, and I think one in South Carolina, where they pay their workers in silver and they mint their own silver. Like they actually make their own silver. They sell it on the market and they pay their employees in silver. It was a YouTube video, it was a documentary about it. I've seen it. I see how people go to their local grocer and say, "This is the silver we minted. You know it's real. Okay, yeah, go ahead and buy whatever groceries." They do the exchange and stuff. So there's a couple of towns now in the US that are sparking up, small towns, like laneway towns, like a couple of major streets, and that's it. And they're minting their own silver and they're trading it. You know what I'm saying? And they're making it
Yeah.
they're making it a thing.
Yeah, I mean, money is supposed to have some intrinsic value. Gold and silver, I think, is just in human beings' DNAs. For thousands of years, people value gold and silver. They store value quite well, better than paper. And people should be able to use it as a form of indirect exchange, and that's why they became money. So I would gladly accept silver and gold.
Well,
But unfortunately, businesses have to pay tax in the local currency, so that's the only problem.
the taxation.
But yeah, and I think in the States and in the UK, for example, there's VAT on silver, so it's not on gold, but so it's difficult to deal in silver, uh, because if you want to be above board, you need to charge the VAT.
Right.
Yeah.
And the problem with you see, I think one of the better administrations was the Eisenhower administration, because when they actually did bailouts or bail-in for companies and helped out, a lot of the money went into the hands of the workers back during the Eisenhower. A lot of it went back to the middle class because they knew they were going to spend it and keep the economy. Now we're drying out. You see all of western of the United States of America, the western part from Vancouver, Canada, all the way to San Diego, Tijuana, Mexico border. Everybody's completely bought out of that. Everyone's moved east, and now they're moving eastward. So it's wagons east. People are losing. Do you see people losing confidence in where they live now? Because you're seeing a mass exodus of, I don't know how many millions of people left California in the last 5 years. You have people leaving Washington State. Washington State, a majority of Washington State luxury condominiums and homes are owned by foreign Chinese numbered companies.
Yeah.
And the American proper cannot secure anything in those areas. They're all moving east, wagons east. Do you see people losing confidence in where they live? This is going
Yeah,
to
I
be a big
think
deal.
it's becoming more like third world countries, where you either have a lot of money or no money. There's no middle class. So, and I think California, I don't know about British Columbia, but California, they have a lot of taxes, regulations, and
BC's
people.
tax. Yeah, there's some people paying like seven. Oh, there was one guy I did on trends in the housing market. He was paying $55,000 a year in property tax for a really tiny little store on the street.
Yeah, I started a business here in the UK in 2012. I bought a franchise for a pawnbroking store called Cash Brokers, and I opened a little shop in the high street where I lived, and the business was good. It grew, but the more I grew, the more taxes and regulations I
Yes.
had to, and I couldn't hire. I had this tax called the business rates. I was paying like 10,000 pounds a year for nothing, and for a small business, it was a lot. I could have hired someone part time to help me, but no, they really punish small business, and I think that's like done on purpose, because the big corporations, they don't want competition, and they control the politicians, and they tell them what regulations to have. It's ironic, but big corporations like regulations because they can get through it.
Right.
They can afford it, and it keeps their competitors away,
It
the
sounds.
small
You
business.
know. You know what this kind of reminds me of. If you want to go parallel with this, it's the whole. It's like a car insurance company. You're paying more in car insurance even though you have no claims because of the bad drivers.
Yeah, kind of.
I
But
kind of see it. I kind of see almost like everything in that light nowadays. How why you pay more in taxes? Well, we have a bad governing system, and they're misusing our funds, so they got to charge me £10,000 a year for nothing. So it's
and I think it's the Rockefeller, John D. Rockefeller philosophy. He hated competition,
Mhm.
and the people who were running things, the bankers, well, they're part of it, the Rockefellers. So the big corporations are controlled by them. They don't want the small mom and pop business doing well.
Mhm.
Countries like Germany is a little different. The small or mid-sized companies in Germany do quite well relative to countries like the U.S. and the U.K. And if you look at the data for an economy, the best thing for job creation is small to medium-sized businesses. They
Yes,
create a lot more jobs. Big corporations usually they're cutting back on employees.
and they're finding loopholes not to pay taxes. Those big corporations, they always find a way
Oh
to.
yeah, they have offshore.
Yeah,
How can I say subsidiaries, and
yeah,
they transfer the profits offshore, and they keep them there.
yeah. That's very scary, especially because it's the small to medium businesses that fund the public sector. Now, the public sector doesn't see funding; they just raise taxes.
Yeah, they just raise taxes, and interest rates are artificially low, so
Yeah.
the governments can borrow as much as they want.
All right. I want to ask you one last question. I've had you here for a while. I don't want to. It's Sunday there. Is it Sunday morning?
Sunday morning, yeah, it's almost 7 a.m. here.
Okay.
Sunday morning.
Now, what advice can you give the next gen that's watching this? There's a lot of next generation. There's quite a few people watching us right now from I'm seeing here from Oklahoma. I have people watching right now from Central Florida. So, what
Yeah,
advice can you give some of the younger generation watching? I know the banks; they're vultures. Uh,
yeah.
what advice do you want to give to somebody that's been waiting on the sidelines to buy a house or waiting on the sidelines to make a major purchase right now in at the end of 2019 going into 2020? What would you tell them?
Ignore all the peer pressure. I remember in the early 80s, when I was in the States at university, there was an advert saying about buying a home and saying, you can have it all, right? It, trying to lure people into taking on debt and buying a house. And I know it's important to have your own place, but don't don't be in a rush. Just live within your means and be disciplined. Uh, Try to do the best job you can do. Try to save if you can. Yeah, and don't be pushed by the propaganda. Maybe stop watching television altogether.
Yeah.
And yeah, don't yeah, buying a house right now. Yeah, maybe buy a house, but instead of buying it in a place where you really like that is more expensive, try to find a place that isn't a horrible place, but maybe where you can get something that's a little less, that you won't have to mortgage yourself too much.
Right.
Uh, yeah, that's the advice.
Can you say something in Portuguese? Você pode falar português? Fala,
Falo
fala.
português.
Fala, diz.
Você fala português com sotaque português. O meu é português brasileiro.
É como Austrália. A Austrália fala como
É,
australiano.
você tem o sotaque português. Meu avô, o pai da minha mãe, ele era português, ele tinha um sotaque.
Oh, tá bom. Muito obrigado. Okay, Mario, buddy, lots of love. And
Thank you.
hopefully we could come back on the show sometime, anytime. We got trends in the housing market every Wednesday. I've been doing it for about 177 episodes where we're
Yeah,
covering the entire Commonwealth and what's been going down. If you want to come on that, just let me know. I would love to have you on and give us a little bit of boots on the ground on what's happening in the UK and what's happening with this whole Brexit thing and what's happening in this massive housing situation. If you want to, and anytime
yeah.
you want to come on Mike in the Night, please just let me know. I'd love to have you
Okay.
on. We cover various topics. I wanted to do more of an economic fog because a lot of people are in a brain fog right now when it
Yeah.
comes to where to put their money and stuff or what to look at or who to trust. So
Yeah, and just to let your viewers know, my YouTube channel, if they want to
yeah, I
have a
have it right
look, is
here.
Maneco64.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna open it right
Okay.
now with you on it. We're gonna go
Okay.
back to your channel, and I'm gonna put it in the Here it is, Maneco64. I'm gonna copy the link,
Great.
and I'm gonna paste it here in the comments. And this show gets a decent replayability.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Mario, don't believe the numbers when you see the video have 9 views on it. Don't believe it. There's a lot of people watching this. I have a lot of people in Toronto and people from Welland, from Auckland, telling me, Mike, everybody knows you at work. Mike, everybody watches trends in the housing market. Mike,
Yeah.
I'm in Melbourne. I walked into the office and someone was watching you on their lunch break.
Yeah, I wouldn't, wouldn't understand why only 9 people watch your show, because I've really enjoyed it. And Mike, Lord Humongous said I should be on it. Then I thought, well, he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, Lord Humongous is a great person. I like him very much.
Mm.
He's had my back here as a moderator. We've had him on the show many times. He's always working on something on the Humongous land there in Colorado. So he's always keeping himself busy.
Great.
Okay, Mario, muito obrigado, amigo.
De nada.
De nada. Okay, man, you have a good day and Happy New Year, okay?
You too. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
So that's Maneco64. Guys, 64, Maneco. It's good. It's good to speak Portuguese once in a while. I speak Portuguese to my kids 24/7. So I'm making sure my kids speak Portuguese. If my son says, Daddy, I want to be an engineer. Sure, son. But you're moving to Angola so you could actually get a real job and get paid real money. Oh, my daughter says, I want to work as a consultant for some food ad. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but you're moving to Mozambique for 5 years. Or no, no. You're going to move to Brasilia. Heck, you're going to move to Macau. Anyways, guys, that was our man, Maneco64. He's got lots of stuff here. Let's look at some of his videos here. He's got inflation is the globalist monetary tool for wealth. Vockler, like rate hikes, a possibility in 2020. Oh my God, I got to see this video. I didn't see this one. It's from a day ago. I don't get notifications from any channels. I lost... What am I sitting at? 69. I'm subscribed to 69 channels. I had 150 like a month ago. I don't even know who I lost. Oh my God. Germans rush to buy gold and silver in Cologne. Yeah, that's from 4 days ago. The Fed is probably hiding trillions of derivatives. Oh yeah. Yeah, this is a good. This one here is good. For sure. I never thought they would hide. I would think they would keep this stuff above board. But now that someone said it, it's probably happening. How I reserved type 2 diabetes medication part 1. That's a very important one there, especially for people. Medication's important. I know I had a friend who lived in South Florida that passed away because they gave him the wrong insulin or something was labeled wrong, and he ended up passing away from that. Yeah. Anyways, so other shout outs here. We got the McChronicle. Guys, don't forget to check him out. Uneducated Economist, don't forget to check him out. He just put up a video 2 hours ago. Chicken in China, prices soar, not for farmers. Yeah. And then we got Lord Humongous here. Don't forget to check him out. He promised he's going to do a video a week. I'm still waiting for this week's video. He's got 2 weeks ago. And we got Boom, Bubble, Bust, Repeat. I spoke to Boom, Bubble, Bust, Repeat. He said he wants to come on the show. He wants to discuss what is happening on his end. And he watches the channel. I'm very surprised I don't see him here in the comments. Very, very surprised he's not in the comment section. Very surprised. Because he's usually on every time he missed us. So, Boom, Bubble, Bust, Repeat. Let me just put a link to... a good insight. Someone knowledgeable that actually could tell you what's really going on right there. There's a link. Maneco64.